Bajashig, welcome. Welcome to InDigital Insights. Monique Manatch and Indigenous, Kitigan Zibi Anishinabeg and Dojiba. My name is Monique Manatch, and I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake. And with us today is Emily Brascoupé-Hoefler.
Yes.
And Emily is a mixed media artist from Kitigan Zibi First Nation, Anishinabeg, living in Ottawa. How you doing?
Good. How are you? It's wonderful to be here.
I'm glad you're here today. This is amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's talk art.
Let's talk art, and how did you get into it? What was your first sort of foray?
Right. So I grew up in a family of artists. My dad is an artist, and I have aunts and uncles and grandparents who all worked in the arts. So I think from a very young age, my mom said that I wanted to be either a farmer, artist, or a lawyer later. But although I spend time in the garden, I did become an artist. So since I was a little girl, I wanted to do art.
Excellent. Did you start drawing when you were little?
Yeah, so we did a variety of arts, painting, drawing. We took a lot of art classes, dabbled in sculpture, photography. So sort of all the mediums, but I would say most of my work today is mixed media, and more recently murals.
When did you know that you wanted to do this as a career? Like, what was that turning point for you?
I think it sort of happened organically. I did study art in university, but during that time, I felt like my style of art maybe didn't fit in that sort of Western education system. So I came away a little bit disillusioned and felt like I was never going to be an artist, and went into a totally different career. But over time, I felt that constant need to be creative and to create things. So I did start making art again for myself. And then there was an opportunity to become a mentee for Pimisi Station, one of the LRT stations. So I applied for that and was accepted. And that's sort of how I really, became an artist or started calling myself an artist, and making art. So it's been a long journey to sort of this time, but yeah.
Did you make one of the paddles, or did you help people make their paddles?
I did make a paddle and I did help people make their paddles. My dad ended up being the lead artist for that project. So I did get to work closely with my dad and two of my sisters. And so that was really exciting. And then Nadia Meyer was one of the other lead artists, for some of the art that's outside the station. So I was just really excited to sort of see how these professional artists works, and getting to work with my dad is always super fun. So
What's that like working with family with art, like your sisters and your dad, like this whole, to me it's such a fabulous dynamic where you're all working together as a family, as creative people. Like what I can't imagine working with my brothers. That's just not.
yeah, I think because growing up, we always were making art with our dad. It feels very natural. So we would go to art shows. He would take us to education days. So we were making art with him since we were very young. And I think as we got older and as my sisters got older and also started moving into the arts, I don't know, we just naturally work well together. Um, when we're collaborating, things sort of roll into place. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's lovely and wonderful.
that would be that would be amazing. What's your favorite project that you've worked with them?
Oh, that's really hard. I mean, Pimisi Station was the first one, and that was a you know, major public art, that's seen by thousands of people every day. So that was really exciting. And then my sisters and I, during the pandemic, started to collaborate together. Um, and I would say we've done like a two-story mural at the Bytown Museum. And that's definitely one of my favorites. But I love them all. I love them all for different reasons, but Bytown was really fun.
And there's also the Ottawa Art Gallery mural,
Yeah, so my sister Mari did a piece outside at the Ottawa Art Gallery.
and at the National Art Gallery.
And we don't have any pieces at the National Art Gallery, but I do have a solo piece at the National Arts Center called Heartbeat of Mother Earth. That was my first solo public art piece of art. I'm immensely proud of that piece. It was really exciting and obviously like a huge honor to create a visual land acknowledgement for them. That's a permanent installation in their lobby.
That's amazing. I mean, your first solo piece is at the National Art Center.
Yeah. It was sort of unbelievable when I got it. I was like, oh, wow. I was shocked, but I felt really strongly about the design. And I think obviously, they saw something in the design that spoke to them too. So I think it was, a perfect match. And I've been so pleased and honored to have my piece there. And they've also featured it on the Kipnis lantern outside. So it's been really cool to see it reimagined, even in a different way uh, than the physical piece.
What what goes into your designs? What's your process around when you're creating something, especially if it's for a specific location or using a specific theme?
Yeah, usually for me, I like to go away and have time to sort of think about the piece and what I might use in it that would symbolize specific elements or aspects that fit within the project. So, for example, with Heartbeat of Mother Earth, I really wanted it to be a visual land acknowledgement. So I wanted it to include the sky, I wanted it to include the earth, I wanted it to include the water, and then I picked elements to sort of fit within those three themes. And then there's two huge eyes that are sort of looking out that represents all people that are there looking back at it. And then usually I'll add in some fun elements too. So there's two tufted bees on that project. And those actually symbolize my sons who love insects and every living creature they can find. So those two little bees sort of symbolize them, and it's sort of a little quiet nod to my family and my family life.
That's beautiful. Absolutely. What kind of projects are you working on now?
Right now, we're working on a few different projects. They haven't been announced, but more murals are in my future, and an art exhibit with my sisters. So we're really excited and moving forward on those projects. And you know, working with my sisters is always fun. We haven't done an exposition together, so I'm really excited that we're going to have that opportunity.
You formed a collective with your sisters.
Correct. Yeah, the Three Sisters Artist Collective. So we are three sisters, but it is also a nod to corn, bean, and squash. So one of my favorite stories.
I like that. Can you tell us that story?
Sure. Yeah. So corn, beans, and squash are three sisters that grow in the garden together. They support each other and give each other things that they need in order to be sustainable and to thrive together. So, the beans put nutrients into the soil that supports the corn, and the squash provides shade for the root system to sort of keep the water and everything in the soil. And then the beans will climb up the corn so that it has like growing space. So the three sisters, they're sort of like, some people tell it as a story where they become sisters, but it's also actually like a way that you can grow your corn, bean, and squash in real life. So
And each of them adds something different um, to,
yeah.
to the collaboration. Do you find that's the same with your sisters?
Oh, absolutely. We all have different strengths and we all naturally can work together and bring forward the things that we're really good at. And I think that's why we've, seen the success that we have so far because we're able to work so well together and collaborate together. Um, and it's just like the symbiotic relationship between the three sisters in the garden. We're able to provide support to each other and bring those different elements.
You've worked in AR, haven't you, a little bit?
Yeah, so we've collaborated with XR Studios, which is an amazing studio that create augmented reality. We have a art walking tour of downtown Ottawa that includes audio stops at places like Pimsey Station. Um, and then there is an augmented reality that was created for Heartbeat of Mother Earth, where if you go there and or you're using the app, you hold it up, and as you're holding it up, an augmented reality will come out of the artwork and sort of form, and you can walk around it, and it tells a story. It's that was a really cool process, and we had the opportunity to collaborate again on a camper called Land Connection that was on Spark Street Mall last fall. And right now it's living at the Ottawa Catholic School Board office and being used for education, but it also has an augmented reality where different animals come out. And thanks to the Cultural Center, each animal, you can listen to the Anishinaabe Algonquin word for that animal. So it's got the visuals of the different animals, but it also has the sound so that people can learn a little bit of the language.
I love how it's all combined there. So you have the image and you have the language and you have the audio so people can relate, uh, which is amazing. Do you plan on doing any more AR, do you think? Is that something you're interested in doing?
I'm very interested in doing more, and we have an ongoing relationship. So I'm definitely hoping that XR Studios and I will be able to collaborate again and keep working to create, educational and fun augmented reality experiences.
You mentioned a program. Is there somewhere people can find that program or get that downloaded on their phone?
Yeah, so the app is called Engage Art, and you can download it in any of the app stores. And they have several different experiences, both in Ottawa and Toronto, and maybe some other places as well. But yeah, so if you download the app, you can go on that walking tour and check out the augmented reality at the National Arts Center.
Excellent. Where does that walking tour take you?
So we had a few stops. There's one at Pimsey Station. There's one at the wayfinding symbol in downtown Ottawa. We take you down to the water, sort of actually just outside the Bytown Museum. And there was, and I'm not sure if it's still part of it, but there was a stop at, I think it's Confederation Park near the Aboriginal War Memorial to see the spirit ponies. But that was last fall. I'm not sure if it's still part of it, but it was, and it was very cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Absolutely. Those are the same. Are they the spirit ponies that they have at the Metasoke farm? They have
Yes.
little ponies there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fabulous. There was that giant basket out in Gatineau. Was that one of the ones, the birch bark? But it was a.
Oh, my dad did that
Oh,
piece.
I think
Yeah.
I worked on that one.
I I am featured on one of the canoes. Yeah. I did sort of follow along as my dad was creating that one. He was sort of moving into public art at that time, but I hadn't made that move yet. But it was really cool to see his process and see him creating that piece and the sort of final design that made it onto the basket. And a lot of my work is inspired by birch bark baskets, so and birch bark generally. So it was really cool to see it reimagined in sort of a contemporary way.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing to see how it literally looks like birch bark. You think you're looking at, yeah.
Yeah.
And how are you featured on one of the canoes?
So when he drew the people, like I think it's all my sisters, and then in one canoe there's like some adults and a child, and that is me and my son, Christian, who was just a little guy at the time.
I remember seeing. I wasn't there, but I saw a video of the canoe coming to the opening, and
Yeah.
I remember because there was a woman from my community who was
Oh, okay.
Rosna.
Okay.
Yeah, she's from Rapid Lake, but she lives in KZ.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a really moving moment to see the people coming by canoe and walking up and with the water. It was incredible.
yeah. I love seeing um, more Algonquin representation. In the ceremonies, in the art. When you look around Ottawa, are you finding that's changing somewhat?
I think it's changing majorly. Growing up, we saw very little like Indigenous art anywhere. I can kind of think in my head, there was one piece of West Coast art that was along the canal that I used to see. And then you would sort of see it at the National Gallery, but more in the context of historical art, not sort of contemporary art. And obviously, recently that's changed. Like last summer, we had Radical Stitch. We have we're seeing our own art popping up across the city. Um, so, in the past, if there was public art, usually it was made by my dad, and he came into that space and created it for us so that we would see ourselves in those spaces. Like he did a huge mural at my elementary school when I was a kid. Um, he had art at the Heart Institute. So a lot of the Algonquin art that I was seeing growing up was art that my dad created.
That must have been something else.
It was because I think at that time we didn't see ourselves in those spaces. We didn't see art in the National Gallery. We didn't see art in public spaces. So to know that my dad was out there taking up that space um, made me think that I could do it too.
Absolutely, yeah. That would be such a role model, for you and for other Algonquin artists. There's so many. I mean, I can think of, a whole like a dozen of them just off the top of my head. From my reserve, let alone from, I mean, there's way more than that at Kitigan Zibi and the other Algonquin communities as well. Like they just,
Yeah.
I'm not an artist, but they've got all these, sketches and drawings and carvings and like maybe you might be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's a really exciting time. I think it's our time. We are seeing art popping up everywhere. Um, and certainly I can see it in my own children. Um, they recognize when they see Indigenous art out and about, and they know when it's their family members or, they're able to see it and they'll go, Mom, look, it's, so and so, or look at that. That's got to be Indigenous art. And you'll look and we know right away that it is. And, it's exciting for them and it makes them feel proud. And, that's what you want for our younger generations to feel that sense of pride and accomplishment of people from their community.
And inclusion, the idea that that, yeah, like you said, that you knew that you could do it as well. Because I
Hmm.
only remember seeing anything at the History Museum, and that was
Yeah.
West Coast. They had a little corner and a
Yeah.
little tunnel that had a couple of Algonquin things and stuff I recognized from KZ and from my own community. It's like, oh, wait a
Yeah.
minute, I think that's, so and so's work.
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't considered art, they were artifacts,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And even that terminology I find problematic.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, artifacts or crafts or handicraft. Um, but yeah, I mean, beadwork can take hundreds of hours to make. So, you know,
and birch barks, like the baskets. I think I don't know how old I was. I was in my 40s before I realized, or I was told, that with the baskets, they scrape away.
hmm.
I thought they just scrape the image in, but they don't. They scrape everything else away.
No, it's birch bark basket making. I've had the opportunity to make baskets a few times, and it's really time consuming. And it's the kind of art where one mistake can mean completely starting over. And because it's so precious to harvest bark and to get the roots and to get, to get all of the elements, it's made from 100% natural resources. So when you're using them, you want to take extreme care and caution.
It's fabulous to see and to think, they do that on canoes and they do that on.
The technology is incredible when you think of canoes and paddles and the baskets. Like, yeah, it's incredible.
Exactly. Like when you think of the river systems all through North America,
Yeah,
those, and we had these beautiful canoes that could just take
take you
us.
anywhere.
Yeah, I'd love to
Yeah,
try that.
yeah, that would be incredible.
Wouldn't it? That would
Yeah,
be great. Get maybe find out some of the historical routes and get communities along the way, where you can to
yeah, that
hold
would be really cool.
so that you're visiting and able to, trade and get
Yeah,
to know each other.
yeah, that's a documentary there.
Right there, yeah. We'll talk about that some more.
Yeah.
And well, they say here, I mean, people, coming here, uh, it was because of the four rivers, the Mattawa, the Rideau,
Yeah,
Ottawa, that there were people from all over that came here.
yeah, yeah. This was definitely a gathering space and a place where people would meet, and yeah, it's very culturally significant, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important that we see that reflected in the area with the government. Like they do conduct open and closes ceremonies for many
Hmm.
events with the
Yeah,
government, but it's not a standard practice. And I think we need to keep sort of the education going.
yeah. And I think especially with the kids, like I know at the schools now, they have land acknowledgements in a lot of the schools. And the education around Indigenous people is more contemporary and I think more honest. And that's what makes me excited because, when you're learning about yourselves in school, you want to feel like it's a true storytelling, you know.
Exactly. When I was growing up, I went to school in Toronto, and we were either savages or um, dead.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute.
yeah.
I'm not dead. I have
No,
a family.
yeah. I feel like even when I was in school, it was still very much, in the past, Indigenous people lived here in the past. Um, you know, people came here and settled here and, brought society and culture, and you're kind of like, okay, like, what were we doing then?
Yeah, for 10,000 years
Yeah,
or more.
so I think, and that's where I think, again, to go back to my dad, like my dad would come in and do art in basically every class, every grade I ever had, I think until high school even, he would come in. and he would tell stories and he would make art with my classmates. And he did that a lot. And I think it really made it, you know, contemporary. We are still here. We are here. Here are our stories. You know, here's art that you can make with me. You know, I think it does make a difference. And I do try to go in. If I'm invited to my children's school, I do try to go in and do art at the school in the same way so that, you know, my kids are seeing it. But it is different today than it was when I was a kid.
Did your classmates treat you differently after your dad would come in?
I think I was really fortunate with the friends that I had. Um, Not usually, but sometimes, um, you know, you would hear jokes, you know, and it wasn't really appropriate, but I think, you know, kids have heard it somewhere from somewhere else. So, you know, at the time, I couldn't really process it. You know, I didn't like it. I didn't like people making jokes. Um, but I would say for the most part, I was really fortunate in that my friends were very loving and kind and knew my dad and loved my dad. So, you know, but yeah, certainly you would hear stories. Um, but I feel like it wasn't really till high school that I encountered real sort of um, what I would consider like racist opinions about Indigenous people. And that was, and then in university was probably the worst that I'd heard up
Yeah,
until that point.
it's funny, eh? You know, little kids, and yet, as we, you know, I used to think there wasn't going to be racism when I grew up because I didn't really know any racist people, but I didn't recognize racism either. You know, which I remember they were having a display in the library, and they wanted to have some Indigenous things, you know. So the librarian asked me, you know, do you have anything at home you could bring in? I was thrilled, you know. Oh, they're asking, you know. So we had a few things that we had gotten from my grandmother and whatnot, snowshoes and, you know, a beaver hat and, you know, different things like that. So we were allowed. My parents said, okay, you can bring that in. And then for parent night, my dad came in and with my mom, and they were talking to the librarian, and she was just so excited to meet my dad. She said, "Oh, I just want to take you and put you up with the display."
Oh,
And I looked at my mom. She can't do that. It was kind of meant as a joke, and it was kind of meant as a compliment, but it was just creepy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it changed how I like. It kind of changed my opinion of her a little bit. That she didn't. I thought, you know, as a person, but it wasn't. It was as
yeah.
a. It was slightly objectified
Yeah, I was going to say it was like he was an object to be included in. Yeah,
in a display. I mean, that was the '60s, though, so you know,
yeah,
one would hope it would get better.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, they didn't have the curriculum they do now. They wouldn't, you know. I go to Carleton, and um, I was I was teaching a course. It's Indigenous people of North America, so that's what it's called. But basically, it's about Algonquins in our territory and in Ottawa.
Okay.
And I send them
Oh,
out.
that's cool.
Yeah, I had your dad come in. Yeah, he
Okay.
was. And we'll talk more about that later too.
Yeah.
And they, I was reading their essays, and I was pleasantly surprised that they had done their research, or they've had some education. Where
Yeah.
it's not your standard, you know, sort of colonial fare. It was a little more understood. It was a little more breadth of knowledge,
Yeah.
which I mean, the good ones anyway. So that you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's,
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like we're in a time of change for sure, where things are changing in many different ways. But I feel like art is always one of those pivotal changes. And when you start to see the changes in art, you start to see it in society.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And there's more land acknowledgements being done, and not just the spoken ones, but people are actively, putting making that statement.
Yeah.
And you've done a few of those with. And what do you think about when you're doing the visuals for a land acknowledgement?
Yeah. So when I started thinking about land acknowledgements, people would often ask me, how do I do a land acknowledgement? And at the time, I didn't know. So I talked to my dad, and he said, a land acknowledgement should include a few things: acknowledging the people who lived in that territory and continue to live in the territory. If you can find out what the territory was used for, so Ottawa was a gathering place, so you can include that, and then your commitment to the land. So my personal commitment is to walk gently on the land and to respect all the people that I meet. So when I'm thinking of a land acknowledgement, I'm thinking of those three elements and putting them together. And I said, it's kind of like when you braid your hair, you've got those three strands. You need the three strands to make the braid strong.
That's wonderful. I'm going to think about that myself. I mean, I do land welcomes, and that's something I explain to my students as well, is that other people who are guests here will do a land acknowledgement, whereas the Algonquin people do a land welcome because this has been our territory. And, but I really, yeah, but I really like what you said. Like, what is my commitment to the land? And what is my commitment to welcoming, not just welcoming people, but my relationship with the land? And what does that mean? And how do I express that so people will understand and will consider that themselves?
Yeah. Well, and I think that takes us away from reading a land acknowledgement that maybe was written by someone else. Because if you're making that personal commitment at the end, even if you've read something that's been written by somebody else, you're still ending with something that is from you,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I would hope a land acknowledgement would bring. Because it shouldn't just be words that somebody wrote for you. It should be something personal to you as the person saying those words.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah, because hello. I was working with a group of Algonquin elders, and we're working with this organization to write a land acknowledgement. And we started off by saying, well, we'd like to welcome you to this stolen land. And they're like, oh, come on. We don't want to pussyfoot around this. We're just going to say it's stolen.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let us.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'd love to know how that went.
Well, we were just, we were having fun with it. And
Yeah.
poor people from the org, they're all, because seriously, right? And we are just giving them a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's our sense of humor too, right? Like, I feel like um, Algonquin people are really funny. Great sense of humor.
Yeah, uh, I can't, it's within a few minutes you're laughing, and laughing hard. Like,
Yeah.
you get into a group of people with the Algonquin, and like, you don't even know their names.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The way I laugh with other Indigenous women is different than the way I laugh with other people. It's much louder.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I'm the same. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
better. My head goes back.
Yeah. It's a real belly laugh. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's that should be the test for pretendians.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you laugh?
How do you laugh? What's your sense of humor?
Yeah.
Do you think this is funny?
Yeah.
No? Well, you might have ancestry.
Yeah.
It's funny how that bright and that dark can I mean, you have to admit some of that sense of humor is a little dark.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's the way that we process.
Yeah, I know I've been in groups with people who aren't necessarily Indigenous, and I say something I think is funny, and they're like,
Yeah.
"That was dark, Monique." Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I will laugh quieter then.
I won't. I'll keep my head up. I had the KZ powwows this weekend too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. We're going up on Saturday. I'm excited.
Right on. Are you dancing this year?
I don't dance. It is one of my great sorrows that I didn't learn to dance. My mom really wanted us to. But when you're a kid, you're like, nah, I
Yeah.
don't want to do it. And anyways, now I'm a bit sad that I don't, but my kids have been going to culture camp at Kitigan Zibi the last couple summers, and they have usually um, dancers that come in, so they've been learning a little bit, and it is my sincere hope that they'll learn. I know it's not too late to learn, but
Same. I say my son too. I didn't even know where to start.
I definitely love watching the dancing. I love to hear the drumming. So I'm looking forward to all of that. I'm looking forward to buying more beads because you can never have too many beads. Yeah. Yeah. Earrings.
Yeah. I'd say there's even a resurgence, of people who are learning how to do these things and keeping those traditions and keeping those activities alive.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's these like activities and camps that are happening in communities that are really bringing that forward. And I think, parents taking their kids to powwows, taking their kids to dance, making them regalia, like all of that is not lost on me.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a cousin who lives in KZ, and her son, her oldest son, he dances, and so does her younger son too. And they're just so like stunning to see them. I was doing some teaching, some like media arts with the kids up in KZ school one time, and I think this boy must have been about 10 years old. And he walked into the room, and he just had this natural confidence, this natural, he owned himself and was completely comfortable with who he was and his culture. It was an immersion program, so they were all speaking the language. And to see that in that generation, compared to when I think of my cousins, myself at that age, his mother is younger. She's I don't know, she's about 20 years younger than I am, I think. So my cousins who are my age, we didn't like, we would go up to Rapid Lake in the summertime, and my one cousin would make jokes about, look, real Indians, because we were like city Indians. And but to see that happening it's been what, 2 generations, and what a difference between you know us going having my generation still going to residential school, and these kids who are um, so strong and healthy.
Yeah. My aunt always says we're a people of abundance, you know, we're strong. So, but it is nice sometimes when you don't have to be strong all the time. And that's where you see with the youth that vibrancy, where they're not feeling that sense of having to be strong, having to put up with racism. They're more open to saying like, nope, not today.
Yeah, they are. And it's not like they don't suffer from the same pressure, I guess, that my generation and yours, and like it's not, because they've had to experience that so much. I think I was the only Indigenous kid in my grade school. There was one other kid, and he moved.
Yeah, There was me and my sister and one other family when I was in school. Yeah.
Yeah. There was another family, but they were older. They were, so they were gone by the time I got there. So yeah, I think that's why the librarian came to me, because there weren't any other Indigenous kids, in Toronto, in Northern Toronto.
In high school, there was more, but we didn't, there was no like Indigenous Student Council or, we weren't getting together and doing activities and cultural things together. Um, like now, there are reconciliation committees and Indigenous student councils in different schools. So, I mean, it's exciting to see young people sort of spearheading this work, and sort of coming together to collaborate and work together.
Yeah, exactly. Same when I was in college too. I went to Humber when I was in the '80s, and my brother was there at the time, and I was asking, like, do you think there's like a, I don't know, a club or something, like there's other Indigenous people here? And he's like, I don't know. He said, I think we'd be in a room of two.
Yeah. When I went to university, I give them credit. It was called First Nation Services at the time. It may be called something different now, but um, I graduated university because of the services they offered, and I spent a lot of time on campus, um, at First Nation Services doing schoolwork, using the computers. They would have beading supplies during exams so we could go and bead, and they had like peer mentoring. So I always had a peer mentor, and I peer mentored. And it just was so good and it was so helpful. And I'm so grateful that that existed because I really needed that support to make it through.
Absolutely. Having that environment where it's your viewpoint and your perspective is shared,
Hmm.
because
Yeah. They would bring
it's
in elders, there would be corn soup. It was really good.
yeah. Yeah, that makes such a big difference. It really does. They didn't. Yeah, we didn't have anything like that. It wasn't a thing. I mean, it's good to see it now. They have Indigenous student centers, and they have even like what do they call it? The enhanced programs where you can go in and you're 360 surrounded by support.
Yeah.
And then once you finish the enhanced program, you can go into whatever program, and you can take courses from that program while you're, but it gives you that support and that, because especially when kids come from up north, or, you know, or they're coming from a French speaking, or they're coming, whatever, the culture
Yeah.
shock alone is enough.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was just coming from Ottawa, but it was still a culture shock. But I know for some of my peers, it was like really very different, being in an urban center and away from their family and that support system that they've had their whole lives. Um, we all felt it being away from our families.
Do you find that there is a, maybe not a style is too strong a word, but um, uh, like when you look at Algonquin art, and then you look at, say, Haida, which is very stylized,
Hmm.
what would you say characterizes Algonquin imagery?
I think our style, um, and I've taken this from Panook Smith, who I talked to about the piece that I created for the National Art Center, um, is simple, not in ideas,
No.
but it's the aesthetic is simpler, and I would say that's generally characterizes the style. So it will feature, like when you look at birch bark baskets, for example, um, it will often feature like one center with designs around it. So the focus is often very, um, narrow. You're looking at one thing that's surrounded by things that complement that main subject. So I think that's sort of how I picture Algonquin art, but I think it is changing, and I think the style is adapting, and we're seeing, the work, for example, that my sister Mari does with the birch bark biting that she transforms. Actually, yeah, she and my dad and my sister Claire, um, they're transforming like a traditional piece of art into a contemporary piece of art. So you're getting this overlay of contemporary art on top of the traditional. So I think it's emerging,
Mhm.
and I would say for us, like our style is often so heavily taken from those birch bark basket designs. My dad's art is that pochoir, that's, the stenciling. And I think Claire, Mari, and I also carry that style to a certain degree where it does look like the etchings of a basket, except that they're, being painted or being drawn in a contemporary way.
I mean, that makes sense. Of course, the style would evolve as
Yeah.
as artists of generations go on and artists evolve. I like that idea. You're right about the clean line. It's the concept is complex,
Hmm.
but the imagery has clean lines.
Yes.
Do you think that differentiates it from like a normal? I don't want to say woodland style because I think that's made up. Um, I mean, I think
Yeah.
it is more Ojibwe or like OG Cree,
Yeah.
like that. Do you think that's how it differentiates from them?
I think so. I mean, I think the woodland style, um, it can be clean lines, but it's definitely more involved. That there's maybe um, the color use is different. Um, I think the heavy black lines sort of between elements, like woodland style when you see it. So I think Algonquin art can be less stylized. Um, like I feel like if you see my art, you would know it, or the collective works that my sisters and I do together. I think you would know that it was ours if you saw them together. Um, Whereas I think if you put 10 Algonquin artists in a room together, like you would know each of our individual works, but when you see them together, you would see that sort of collective cleanness between them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think the use of digital tools would change, maybe not the basic concept, but certainly change um, how these images are presented, or or even maybe possibly the style? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything changes, right? So when we were making baskets and we were decorating them, like that was one way of making something. My sisters and I painting a basket mural has changed it, because we can make a 3 or 7 foot mural of a basket that when you see it, you know right away that it's a birch bark basket. But it's obviously very different than, one you've made by hand that is maybe 10 inches tall or whatever. So I think technology and the mode that we're using to create the art is going to change it. And so digital art is going to change it again, but I don't think it's necessarily changing it for the worst. Like I think it's really interesting to see the art that's coming out of technology, like the work that I've collaborated with XR Studios on, like that is a completely digital imagination of stories and ideas that we talked about, but it's playing off of a physical piece of work. So there's still that connection to, something that I've made, and then it's sort of something that I've imagined and like collaborated with these amazing artists to produce. So I think it's exciting to see where technology is going to take us.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that evolution is necessary. We're a living,
Yeah.
breathing, imagining society.
Hmm.
We're not, we don't want to go the same way as Latin. And
Yeah.
with these new tools and with the new generations of who will learn from your work and your sister's work and your dad's work, who will be able to take a look and say, yes, I can take it in this direction. That
Yeah.
freedom to be able to stay connected to the culture and to the land, I think, because that's a real,
Yeah.
but move forward, not,
Yeah.
I don't even say forward, but just express in their own unique ways.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I do hope that people will continue the traditional aspects too. So it's not to say like let's move forward, or move in a different direction, but forget where it comes from. Because I think you still need the birch bark baskets to have a birch bark basket mural. So you know, it is still rooted in our traditions, but just bringing forward another way of imagining that tradition.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where, having these younger people pass on those activities, the moose hide tanning, the
Yeah,
eating, the snowshoe making, the canoe building, you know,
yeah,
those things.
yeah,
Having, the people who are carrying that and passing it along. Because, yeah, without that, where's our, you know, where's
yeah,
our, where's our foundation?
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been amazing. I really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
talking to you today.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Kachimi Gwich, thank you.
Miigwech, thank you so much.